It's time to get started. This talk is about building a successful REU experience in a small department. Our speakers are David Brown and Victor Elias from Ithaca College and Hondo College.
Great, thank you. And thanks, folks, for joining us on a Sunday afternoon. So I just want to talk a little bit about a program we ran at Ithaca College. We have a smaller department, less than 10 faculty, and very few majors, actually. And so I want to talk to what led to this program and how someone may want to try to emulate something like this. How do you get things going? I'm joined by Victor Elias, one of our former students, and this was done in collaboration with Ted Galanthe and Dan Vischer, who are actually the PIs on the grant, and I'll explain how I got involved. Um, so back around 2019, I was coming off of several of the grants I was on, and I was also department chair at the time. And our department had gone through a significant amount of turnover. About half the department had retired after about 35, 40 years of teaching. So we brought in a whole new bunch of faculty at about the same time that, the major was starting to dwindle a bit. And then I started thinking back to earlier in my career when I was involved with REUs with some CS faculty members and how it really gave a real jumpstart to my career to be engaged with undergraduate research and students from all over the country. So I reached out and tried to get some interest built from the department to see who would like to maybe partner on building an REU program within the math department, figuring that, after 20 some years, maybe I could mentor up younger faculty on how to write grants, administer grants, run the programs, and also build it up for getting yourselves tenure and on to full professor. So I took sort of a mentoring role. So I put out a call. That was probably May of 2019. And first to answer was Ted Galanthe. He's in the middle down here. And we started chatting and we finally got one other person, Dan Vischer. Ted had joined the department in 2013, Dan in 2017. So Dan was really fresh. And I'll talk in a few minutes why it was pretty serendipitous that these two responded to me in terms of the uniqueness of our program. Um, we had had a history of running student projects in our department back when the major was much larger and actually required it in our curriculum, but the opportunities were dwindling. So it was time to see what else we could do. So made out the call in spring of 2019. These three came along. We spent the summer writing and brainstorming and coming up with things. And I put in parentheses support there with support. And I'll share what I mean by that a little later. We actually had a grant writer come on with us. And we ended up submitting in late 2019, the summer, August 2019. Submitted, knew we would have to wait. Of course, the bad things happened that following spring, and we just figured things were going to be quiet on the NSF front for a while. But lo and behold, in July of 2020, we got the initial call that we were going to be recommended for funding, and it would start in summer 2020. So we're rolling into the fall of 2020, which is right in the middle of everything. So how do you recruit during a pandemic as you're starting a program? Would we be in person? We would have to go virtual. There was some research being done in summer of 2020 at the college, but that was all virtual. So we weren't excited about repeating virtual research. So fall of 2020, where you've got the funding, we've been awarded. College is completely virtual. So we're working. I haven't seen my colleagues in person in months, right? We build the the website, we start advertising, we work with administration to push, can we please get in person if the things open up? Spring of 21, college opens up partially for hybrid teaching. So we start to get a little excited. We tried to build a strong applicant pool. We did. We had over 150 applications for that first summer, which was exciting. So we did our review, we did our select. We still didn't know by March if we would be in person or not, but we built a cohort And then finally we get informed we can go and be in person, right? So that was the most exciting part of that first year. And we welcomed our first cohort that summer of 21 in May. They come in campus right after Memorial Day. And we met about a week ahead of time within our little subgroup. So each Dan, Ted, and I had a group. So we each met with our three student researchers on Zoom just to get introduced to each other before they all come together the later that week. Um, we found that, so we ran ours for 8.5 weeks. So 8 weeks after that middle of the Memorial Day week where it came on, found that was perfect for us. Even in that first year, we had students from all over the country, West Coast, East Coast, middle of the country, north of the country. So it was great. And it was a perfect amount of time, and it fostered exactly what we wanted to, which was community growth and reflection, which are big themes for the summer. And we wanted these students to be ready for graduate school or whatever else career-wise they were thinking later on. And so we were trying to build this community of scholars. And here's a picture of that first group in that first summer. You can tell things actually lulled down with the pandemic, so everyone was even unmasked, which was quite nice. Um, so just a little bit about the specifics. We won't go into too many details about what our program was, but it'll highlight the uniqueness of this particular REU. So Dan, he works in Dynamical Systems, and he had a project on looking at billiard trajectory dynamics on surfaces of revolutions where the boundaries are created by geodesics on those surfaces of revolution. I myself work in discrete dynamical systems. So I look at graph-driven iterated function systems and the topology of the resulting attractors, the fractals that come out of that. And then Ted, who served as the PI on the grant, he works in dispersal dynamics. So he meshes game theory with differential equations. So you have Dan working in continuous dynamics, you have me working in discrete dynamics, and you have Ted working in the intersection of those two areas. And that is what gave a uniqueness to our grant proposal. We're all in the same sub discipline, and so it allowed for actually a common intellectual community so that even though the three projects are quite different than each other, the students within each of those three projects have a great opportunity to understand the language and the processes and the objects being studied in the other two projects, which was really quite nice. And again, it was serendipity. I would have worked with anyone who was interested in our department in mounting an REU. But once we realized all three of us worked in the same area, of course, we knew that ahead of time, it gave us this idea to focus on that. And as I said, I'd been senior, I'd been on several grants. I suggested, even though they were heading into just their tenure times, that Ted take over being the PI on the grant, and I would work in the background. Dan would be the co-PI, and I would just be on the grant as senior personnel, which actually was great because I was still supported on other grants, so my salary, I didn't really have to impinge upon the grant so much, and more of the salary dollars could go to those two. So so these were the areas. This was the unique part of, I think, for our REU proposal was this common subdisciplinary area. These are our three cohorts. So the first cohort up in the upper left, 21, then Victor's cohort here in 22, and then our third one here in 23. In 22, it was quite hot for us, so we hid under trees. That's why you don't see the fountains in the background there in 22. So yeah, so we tried to just have a good time while working hard. Um, so some of the challenges, so you're trying to secure REU funding, right? If you're in a smaller institution, smaller department, resources are limited, including time, right? So you've got a lot of things to handle if you're a small faculty, and uh, that's one of your limitations, maybe funding limitations at the school. NSF REU funding's highly competitive, less than 30% are funded, the proposals, and there may be challenging times. We ended up facing this COVID time. Today it might be what's the state of federal funding? And so, but it shouldn't hold you back. You should try to go ahead and apply if you can, because the benefits, I think, outweigh the challenges. Some strategies. So what's unique? I would spend some time thinking what would make your program unique. Are there things locally you can harness that would play a big role in this? Perhaps there's some local industry around where you could go and partner in some sense to with them, depending on what the areas of research you're working on. And you want to build strong proposals with clear objectives and measurable outcomes that you can really articulate. And what can really be helpful with this, well, one thing you can do is you can ask other grant awardees to share their proposals. They're usually happy to do that. We read a few of those before while we were writing. But one thing we had done for our grant was I actually negotiated. We have one grant person who's our whole grant office at our college, but I had worked with grant programs at bigger universities on other grants I've been on, and where they have a whole team of grant writers, and what a luxury that is to be part of. Um, so when we were writing this grant, I talked with our grant officer about could we pay a professional grant writer. It would increase our chances of getting awarded, and it would cover the cost to the college to pay this person to help us write. And the beauty of it is having the grant writer, they agreed, and then followed up and did it on a follow-up grant that I was on too. They hired someone who was just a professional grant writer. And the beauty of it is the grant writer allows you to just be a brainstormer. So you come up with an outline of ideas that you send to them, they meet with you, talk things through. They typically have experience with NSF and writing grants or NIH or any of that. But they might not be mathematicians. So they ask really good questions about clarity for a broad audience. And we found that to be the greatest help whatsoever, is to help us see what was in our blind spots. And that I can't underestimate how much that was worth. I can't overestimate how much that's worth. If you can't get the college to pay for one, if you have a writing program, you may have grant writing people in your writing to program, as we do at our college. You might reach out and see if they would be able to help you. So these are just some simple strategies when you're doing the writing process to get you moving along to a strong grant. And as you could tell from what I said, using the grant writer, we ended up getting it on the first attempt. We never had to resubmit. The next grant that I wrote with using a grant writer, we got on the first attempt without having to resubmit. Other grants I wrote without a grant writer, I always had to resubmit. It's a small sample, but it seems I see a pattern there for myself. Um, so our recruitment strategy, so we wanted to hit and have as diverse a group as we could of students coming in. So you hit all the usual things like the AMS and the MAA and get out on their listservs. But we reached out to colleges in particular. We reached out to community colleges, historically Black colleges, Hispanic serving institutions. We went to professional societies like SACNAS and AWM, reached out on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, went to our own individual academic networks. We flooded the market. And our selection criteria, well, we focused on, you did well in coursework. We didn't have a high bar, mainly if you've gotten through some sophomore level mathematics like linear algebra and maybe multivariable calculus is all we needed. And we wanted to gauge your interest in research, your potential for growth, what your plans were as the students were applying. And the big one for us was lack of opportunity. Would the student lack the opportunity because they were at an institution that just can't foster undergraduate research, or are they at a big research place where they just are always lost in the mix. So that was a big piece of what we chose to focus on, is giving new opportunities to folks who may not have it at their home institutions. And I think we were successful in that. Just an outline of activities during the summer. We have some big events. So day one was a full day orientation process. We had I mean, it ran from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., getting IDs, acclimating to the whole college campus. We wanted to, then that day ended with a dinner at Ted's house, so the PI's house. Through the summer, we would have hikes and stop for ice cream. Around July 4th, when folks are kind of in and out for family things, we host a big old picnic at my house. Um, we had game nights. There were 3 different times where we had major student assessments going on. So really the reflective part of the summer research. And we ended each summer with a poster session and a goodbye party. Um, Weekly events every day. We check in early in the morning, let the groups work, check in the afternoons, weekly presentations with refreshments. So those would be on the like Wednesdays. We would hold these colloquium talks, probably bring in people to talk. We had these mentor lunches on Thursdays. So that was mentor to mentor. I'll talk about in a minute. And then we'd have informal Friday conversations with a lunch we would bring in for the students. So they get to choose where we were eating that week and bring in some food. And reflective writing. We made them keep logs and write about what they were working on and what they felt about what they were working on. We wanted to really make sure they were thinking about the process while they were doing the process. Yeah, so mentoring, right? This is the big piece. We wanted so we had the mentors to the students, that was for sure. With these daily check-ins, we used actually a product. It's an integrated evaluation protocol or environment. It's called Evaluate UR. It was created by Jill Singer out of Buffalo State College. And what it does is it formalizes the assessment of growth uh, in undergraduate summer research um, projects. And so basically a website that you can work and tailor to your own program to hit major questions about mentoring and about personal goal setting and are you achieving them? And it pings them at the start, at the middle, and at the end. And it makes a great framework for conversation about reflection and understanding what the student is learning in the process of the REU. And then we follow them after the REU with making sure they go to conferences. We still have money for that. And we follow them in a LinkedIn group. The mentors got together every Thursday for lunches out at a picnic table, and we would sit and just talk about what's going on and how you address various issues that may be cropping up. And it was kind of cool because then faculty around campus saw us doing this, and so they joined us for those lunches too. And it made a nice broad conversation. And we also had the former students come back too. So we would Zoom them in to talk about their experiences and hear about the current group's experiences. Dan came up with that idea, and I think it was fabulous. But I don't want to take too much time because I want to turn it over to Victor to talk about his perspective on this.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Victor. So I'm currently located on the West Coast of the United States. So I'm originally from La Puente, California. When I was applying to this batch of research programs, I was currently taking Calc 3 and linear algebra. And from what I was looking at primarily, most of the programs that I was looking into, they often required a upper division mathematics that wasn't currently available at my institution. So courses like abstract algebra or numerical analysis. So I think this was really the perfect program that for me to have been able to participate in. So initially, why I had chosen to do research, I wanted to see what other perspectives there were prior to transferring as a current community college student. There's some difficulties in the transition to transferring, so it's often not. There's a lot of obstacles confronting current community college students. I think it's gotten a little better over the years in terms of transfer shock, and I wanted to see what I could do to hopefully try to mitigate myself in that situation prior to transferring. Um, and I actually wanted to do research partly due to my advisor. He had recommended me like some programs and like the benefits, particularly like maybe even going out of state, which I was able to. It was the first time I was able to go out of my hometown and fly across the country, which was a really enthralling experience from when I had. In terms of what I was learning over there, I learned how to better communicate mathematics, how to better convey through proofwriting, um, how to better write math, because writing math in itself is also an art. And then just having a broader community with students from all over the country who I've been able to still talk to this day, which is, I think, the most important aspect of the entire program that I got, just a whole community and alumni that I can still talk to and go back to. In terms of like what I did after the research, I was able to present at the joint mathematics meetings in 2023 in Boston. I was able to do that with my other group participants, Clara and Sammy. And there were other, I think most of us actually were able to present there, which was actually really cool. Um, and I also was able to present it at the 2024 NDI STEM SACNAS conference past this year in Phoenix. And as of present moment, I actually wanted to try a little different avenues. So I went at the same time, there was my school, they did an inaugural REU program of themselves. So I want to see what else there was in terms of research. My physics professor, he initially reached out saying that he was doing this grant in collaboration with the University of Southern California in chemical engineering. So a completely different discipline in itself. I ended up working in a wet lab for approximately 20 months. I recently said goodbye to my PI last month. And so now moving forward, I think I've really gotten an interest in interdisciplinary research within math and chemical engineering. And so it's definitely an exciting process for me right now for what I plan to do next.
Hey, thanks, Victor. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll just wrap up with a few parting thoughts here. So there's always these ongoing challenges, right? Each year building a team, building a community out of folks from many different places. We have community college students, we have four-year students from four-year institutions, big universities, different parts of the country. So, as hard as it is within a classroom, you're trying to do it in an 8-week session in the summer. You just learn to be flexible, right? And we learn to be flexible with objectives because projects, well, we all know they don't go as you always plan. And there's other summer commitments. I was chair, and then halfway through this, I became an associate dean. So I had summer up. So you just run into lots of things that get in the way sometimes. And balancing, your work and your family time is another one. The faculty on this grant, Dan in particular, was having young children at the same time, so he was not interested in continuing. So we've taken a break from running this REU as faculty are growing their own families, and then we'll see if we come back in the future. But that is a challenge, is the commitment to giving up your summers, giving up in quotes. It's good for the students, good for the faculty, great for your departments, good for your college. We tied our college's mission statement to our goals in the program and highlighted those in the proposal. and had a fabulous time with it. And here's pictures from our closing poster sessions, just a mishmash of these posters around the same building where we worked. And folks came in, families, friends, faculty from all over campus, administrators. It was lovely. So thanks to NSF. I see everyone here, Victor especially coming and talking with me. It's great to go from a mentor to a colleague. Simeode for hosting this. If you're at the SIAM conference, Ted Galanthe is going to be running a similar session, a panel with other folks from other REU programs on how to get things started. And that's our contact information. And there's a cake from the end of the summer. So thanks for joining us. And I think that's it.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing.